What's your name?
Jessi Fritz, Armenta.
How was your day today?
It's pretty good. I'm a little tired. Went skateboarding in the morning and then did a staff class, which is like bow staff. It's like
Yeah.
Xena. So,
We'll just get straight into the deep questions. Can you just tell me a little bit about your childhood?
sure. So I'm originally from San Diego. I'm an only child.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my parents divorced. Um, I had a pretty awesome childhood, not gonna lie. An only child, great family, really supportive and loving family. Um, up until up until my parents divorced, um, that was really hard
Mm-hmm.
um, on me, and our family went through a lot. Like my mom ended up falling kind of into a deep depression after the divorce, and kind of went through like a period of alcoholism, and nobody really knew about it. So that led me into kind of my own darkness and this own depression after my parents' divorce. And
How old were you when they divorced?
I was 12, and yeah, I had like I said, I had a really wonderful family, and I'm still keeping contact with both my parents. And thankfully, I had a lot of outlets. I had school, and I had skateboarding, which I'm also an active skateboarder. And I think if it weren't for those things, it would be a very different story for sure. But as far as like my teenage years go, I fell into a really deep depression and got into drugs and alcohol, and wasn't doing good in school, and kind of just like didn't see a purpose in any of it, and didn't really feel valued. And I think like as I look back at it in hindsight, I really like forgot how to love after that, and that was really difficult, and I don't think I really got over that until I was in my late 20s.
When you're 12 and your parents are getting divorced, how was that? How did that feel being 12 years old and going through that?
Um, I mean, I think at first I didn't really kind of understand what was happening, um, because I had such a good kind of like innocent childhood that like this just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like it fit. I was just kind of like, oh, I don't understand, you know. But I think as I got a little bit older, especially like when I was like 13 or 14, I think how it felt was like I just felt this deep seated like anger and resentment towards like, and I think a lot of people go through this as they grow up, is like, this isn't how the world is supposed to be. Because like you're always told, oh, you're supposed to have a mom and a dad or whatever, and when you don't fit that narrative, um, you become something other. You
Yeah.
become something that's like not normal, and that definitely like stayed with me for a really long time.
How'd you deal with that?
Like I said, like not good. Like I I I went into this really deep depression, like a very dark place. I like when I was a teenager, I thankfully had skateboarding, but I also had alcohol and drugs. Um, I attempted suicide a number of times. So I don't know, like I was in this place where, people kind of knew, but they also didn't know. I think like my mom knew because she was also in depression, but most of like my, most of my family didn't actually realize what was happening. And the other part of the other part of that was that my mom didn't tell anyone that she was an alcoholic. So it was basically just me kind of
Right.
knowing that, and knowing that secret, and kind of keeping that secret for like 15 years as I grew up. Um, so yeah, it was very hard to deal with.
What were your dreams as a child?
Pretty much the same dreams I have now. So first of all, to be a sponsored skateboarder was one of my childhood dreams. I grew up, like I said, I grew up in San Diego, which is like one of the birthplaces of skateboarding. It's a very big part of the culture there. So I grew up around, all the famous pro skaters and wanted to be like them. I wanted to be a pro skater. I also grew up watching like television, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Xena, all those 90s shows. So I wanted to be a stunt woman. And then on top of those things, I think I've always had this curious part of me that like wanted to, be an astronaut or be involved in space or something like that. And that kind of morphed into wanting to be a lawyer for like a quick minute after watching like Legally Blonde or something. So, wanting to either be a lawyer or be involved in space like the astronaut or something like that. That eventually, as I got a little bit older, that evolved into wanting to do more stuff like towards the environment. So like environmental sustainability and really like working to make sure that we leave a better place for our children.
Can you tell me about your relationship with your dad and how that felt?
Yeah, that's a hard one. My relationship with my dad when I was younger was not the best. He was the one who ended up leaving. It wasn't like a super negative divorce, you know what I mean? Like they just they didn't want to be together anymore, and he very quickly remarried, kind of like a little too early. Like it was happening maybe before they got divorced, but my relationship with my dad has always been really tumultuous and hard because I think when I was a kid, I just never really felt loved by him, and I never really felt like good enough. And he's an engineer, so he always kind of gives off this he doesn't really know how to show emotion, and that's been always very difficult to have the like emotional conversations with my dad, especially about the divorce, because he really didn't want to talk about it. And I think that caused me a lot of pain for a really long time, than my relationship with my dad. We didn't talk for quite a while, but I'm lucky and I'm really grateful that he has been in my life, and been really supportive. He always was really supportive of education, which is like why I even went to college, or one of the reasons why I did go to college. So we have kind of a up and down relationship, and I'm grateful for the relationship with him, but it has always been hard.
What about your relationship with your mom?
In the beginning, after my parents split up, I did live with my mom, and I also lived with other my grandparents, as well as like an aunt and an uncle. So me and my mom's relationship has also been up and down. She's always been there. I think I developed this sense of resentment towards her because of her alcoholism and her depression, which I blamed her for a really long time. As I got older, I think this resentment actually, it got worse, because as you become an adult, you kind of realize the mistakes that your parents made, that maybe they maybe could have not done anything about, but you realize those things. And her alcoholism also got worse, which kind of created more resentment and anger and frustration in me. And I went away I lived with my mom all the way up until high school, and then I went away to college, and I ended up moving back in with her after college for just like a very short period of time. which was really like a very hard situation. Like she was still like, or she was a pretty heavy alcoholic at that point, and I was like an adult trying to come into her relationship and her house, and it just like didn't work. And I was like, I need to get out of here. Like I can't be here right now, which ended up causing me to move to the East Coast to get a job. After many years on the East Coast, my partner and I, we got married. We moved back and got married, and my mom fell into a really, really dark depression and heavy alcoholism, to the point where like I had to take work off to go take care of her. And that relationship, that actually was like last year. So I took time off work and took care of her, and did the rehab cycle. And I know a lot of people have dealt with that, but that's a really hard place to be, especially when you're the child trying to take care of the parent who is feeling all this shame from everything that they've encountered in their life, and from having their child take care of them is really hard for the parent. Thankfully, my mom was able to bring herself out of that, which I am just like so astonished at, because it takes a lot of work. Like for alcoholics to remain sober, it's not easy, and it takes a lot of work. So I was like really proud of her for coming out of that.
What would you say you learned from both your parents?
I think from my mom, I definitely learned hard work, compassion, and a love of sports. She was like a huge softball player. She was like MVP at her high school. She was going to go to UCLA to play softball, and some things unfortunately happened in her life where she wasn't able to realize those dreams. But I definitely learned those things from her. And then from my dad, I learned a sense of curiosity and imagination. And I really that's like one thing as I grow up, or as I am coming more into adulthood, I'm really excited that my dad instilled those things in me. And even when I talk to him today, we end up just talking for hours about grand ideas, which is something I never had when I was a kid, because I couldn't really have those conversations with him. And I just wanted him to take me to a movie or something. And he wanted to talk about engineering or whatever. And I was just like, this is not what I want to talk to you about. But as I got older, I realized that he instilled those things in me, which have played a huge part in my life now.
Can you tell me about your first love and how that felt?
My first love, dang.
It could be anything.
Yeah. Okay. It could be a person or a thing?
It can be a person or a thing, whichever you would say was your first.
Okay. Then if it's my first love, I'd have to say it's probably skateboarding. That's before any boyfriends or anything like that. So definitely skateboarding was like this dream. It was like the place that you go when you just want to be in your own world, in your own imagination. And I picked up a skateboard. It was in my parents' garage one day, and I think it was my uncle's dad or my dad's skateboard or something like that. And I just remember riding it down the driveway and being like, what is this? This is so cool. And I'm pretty sure I fell on my face or something like that. But it gave me an outlet into imagination and being able to create, but then also being able to, create something on your own without I'm trying to articulate it. It's without having to be like around other people. It's like kind of your own thing. And I really craved that as a kid because of being an only child. Like, you would think that you had a lot of alone time, which I did, but I just kind of always wanted to be in my own space, kind of creating and doing little things and puzzles. And I always felt like, my family kind of pushed me towards team sports and softball and soccer and all that stuff. And skateboarding for me really became this like haven of creativity and a love of physics and sport. So that would definitely be my first love.
What about your first loss or heartbreak?
Ooh. I mean, there were some toys that I lost when I was a kid, but I don't know if I would like include those. I'm thinking back to like this time when I was really sad.
Devastating.
I mean, I'd have to probably say that my parents divorced, just because it was such a pivotal point in my childhood. It's like you look back on things and you kind of see like how innocent or almost like naive and ignorant you were as a child, and like up until that point I was kind of like in this like naive bliss, just like childhood, like like innocence, and that was kind of like the rug was pulled under me, and it was just like you see the dark side of the world, you see things that and I think you start to see that in everything when you go into sometimes you go into like depression, you start to see all the negative in the world. And I think that loss, that break in my family became my first heartbreak, which really shaped me a lot.
Who would you say first taught you what love is and how?
I would say definitely my parents, because they gave me unconditional love, which I'm very grateful for. But my first realization of being taught it was actually my partner, my wife, and we met in college. And I was going through we were both kind of going through a breakup at the time. And I was just so angry. I mean, this was like my late 20s. And I was still so angry from my parents' divorce and all of the stuff, right? Like the drugs and the alcohol and the depression. And we met as friends. We were like doing this volunteer program together, and there was something about her, like I said, we were friends, but we kind of developed this very deep relationship. And for the first time in my life, like, she taught me that it was okay to love myself. And I think loving others and understanding what love is important, but I think when you understand how to love yourself, that's when you really, like, you first get taught love. Because you have to love yourself in order to do anything else, like in order to even believe in dreams, any of that. And I think, like, a lot of people go through that, like when they go through something devastating as a child or even as an adult, you forget how to love. And for me, that relationship, like, changed my whole life. It changed my whole perspective. And I don't think I would be able to, like, love anyone if it weren't for her.
What are some of the things you do to show yourself that you love yourself?
I think the biggest thing is, like, going after my dreams. When I, like I said, when I was in college and my partner and I got together, this was like late college, and I kind of had like an aha moment, and I was like, wow, I just need to like live for myself, which I haven't done my whole life. I haven't lived for myself. I haven't gone after these dreams. And I think when I did go to college, I went for the purpose of like proving to other people that I could do this thing. And I want to tie this back in because I think it's like important, but I ended up going to study political science, and I wanted to be in politics. And I think for me, a big part of wanting to study politics was because I was really drawn to like prestige and power, and that came, I think, from having to prove to my parents that I was worth it, or proving to my dad more specifically that I was worth it. And that came in part from not loving myself. And after being in politics for some time and going to work in DC and all these different things, and just realizing this is not for me. Yeah. This is not what I want to do. This is like totally, I was like completely jaded by the whole system, and came back, and like I had this aha moment, and I was like, oh my God, my childhood dreams, like that's it. Like that's all I need to do to love myself, is go after them. Yeah. So like I decided to quit my job in politics and go work for a coffee company, which is something I always wanted to do, which is super random, and a lot of people would not see this as prestigious, but it was like something that I had always wanted to do. Started skating again because I had quit for a long time, and more specifically, like really started to look into how to be a stunt person. And those are the things that I do because I, have learned to love myself.
What's love to you now versus what it was compared to when you were younger, and how do those two different loves feel?
Mm-hmm. I think love when you're, well, I'm going to do it backwards from the question, but love when I was younger felt like attention, and it felt like being accepted, I guess, in a surface level sense of acceptance. And love now feels more like belonging, as well as just an embrace of yourself. I think there's a difference between accepting and embrace. Yeah. And I think for me that's the difference that I see in love between being a kid and now.
Can you tell me what's a good day like for you? Just a general good day.
A general good day? Like in imagination or in real life? In real life?
Yeah, in real
okay.
Life, yeah. Like you were like, oh, that was a good day.
That was an awesome day? Okay. I recently had one of those days, actually. It's just kind of one of those days that like comes together, and at the end of the day you just feel so satisfied and like self-expressed, and you feel awesome. And sometimes they don't start out great. You think that nothing is going your way, and for me personally, I like to feel like I've accomplished something during a day. And I usually don't get up early. I wish that I did, but I don't. I'm just not that type of person. So usually I would get up and, try to kind of get going, because I'm kind of like a lagger in the morning. And what ends up happening is I like wake up late, and then I have to eat breakfast really fast and drink some coffee and like kind of get a move on. But I think I've been going out to skate at Venice Skate Park a lot, so maybe start off my day at Venice Skate Park, and then talk to some friends. And whenever I go to the skate park, I have a great time. Like there's hardly a day where I come back from the skate park and don't have a good day. And I'm a huge, like I said, I used to work in coffee. I used to be a coffee roaster, so probably get a cup of coffee, just kind of hang out and sit and reflect and think about the day, and maybe go see some of my family members. My wife's sisters live pretty close to us, so we go over to see them, and that just makes me feel really like I do belong, like it feels like family. And then, I don't know, hang out and end the day like with dinner or a movie, hanging out with the sisters, hang out with our cat, like pretty simple. Just like the simple life. I just once I feel like I've accomplished something during the day, though, like if I come back from the skate park and I've landed a trick that I've been trying for a really long time, like that makes me feel like it's been a good day.
Now, what about a bad day? How do you push through that bad day?
Definitely had a lot of bad days lately. I think all of us could say that. A bad day for me are days when I wake up and I kind of just do a bunch of nonsense to distract myself, and like go on the computer or just scroll or just like totally mindless, because I don't want to like think about either what's happening in the world or what I actually like want to do. Like if I want, like usually bad days are where I don't go skateboarding, I don't do something active. I feel like I don't accomplish something that day, and I think it's pretty hard to push through those days. I feel like a lot of us beat ourselves up because we like think there's this idea of like perfection and this perfect day and like I've accomplished something today. And I was like on this hike the other day and I realized something that was, I know why I'm not doing the thing that I should be doing, but it's usually me beating myself up about that causes stress and depression and just kind of me sitting there all day and not producing something or whatever. And it's not necessarily that I am not doing the thing that's frustrating. It's that I'm beating myself up about it. And I think the way that I try to get through those days is by feeling like I've accomplished something. So maybe I'll make a video or I'll try to go for a walk or something like that. But I can definitely say that there are days that I don't really push through. Like I just kind of like let it go and wake up and feel kind of lame the next day. But
so if you feel lame the next day, how do you stop that from rolling over to the next day, etc.?
I think I have to go into like a sense of reflection, and it's usually our mind or my mind telling me I don't want to reflect on that thing, which stops me from doing that. But I think that's the really big important part. If not that, then I'll try to kind of snap myself out of it through some sort of action. Like I need to go skateboarding, I need to do my stunt classes, like I need to do something, because after it I know I will feel better, even though right now I don't want to go to the thing. I don't want to go to the class, like I don't want to go see anybody. And then after the session, or after I come back from the park, I'm like, why was I even feeling lame? Like that doesn't make any sense. I had a great day. But usually it's having to take either an action or some like serious self-reflection, which for me usually means writing. Usually just writing.
What's a person or an event that's helped shape you, good or bad?
A person?
Click it on.
Oh, sorry. On my brown one?
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go.
They're good. Do you mind if I have some water?
Of course, yeah, those are for you.
Okay, cool. I was like, oh, those look nice. So the question was a person or
Or
an event that has shaped you?
Good or bad?
Good or bad? Oh. I mean, there's been a lot, so I'm trying to think of the one that has had a really huge influence on me. And I'll say living in New York as an event. Before I had moved there, I was working for some political nonprofits, and I had worked in DC for like a short stint, and I was trying to figure out like what the heck am I doing with my life right now. I moved there just because I needed a job, and there weren't a lot of jobs in California at that time, and DC was kind of like the only thing. So after I decided like I can't do this anymore, like I need to do something else. I applied. You know, I was kind of at rock bottom right then. My partner at the time was moving to the East Coast to live with me, but she had already gotten an apartment, and then I was like, I'm gonna quit my job. And it was like, what? Like she had already gotten a job like in New York and everything, and I was like, I can't do it anymore. I can't work in politics. So as I was kind of like hitting rock bottom, I was like, I have nothing else to lose right now. Like I'm gonna move to New York, and I think I applied to Starbucks at Rockefeller Center. Like I applied to just like whatever, like super random places. And I applied to this coffee company called Stumptown as a warehouse person, which I had no experience at all. And I remember the interview, he goes, and I've worked with him now for years and years, but the guy at the time goes like, can you lift 100 pounds? And I was like, I weigh 100 pounds. And so, you know, I was doing this interview like during my lunch in a campaign canvassing van, like in the middle of summer in New Jersey. And I don't know if you're familiar, but it's like really humid there. So I was like sweating, and I was just like, I need to get this job. Like, you don't understand. So I eventually did get that job, and I moved to New York. And if it wasn't for that experience working there at that coffee company and living in New York and all of the different people that I met, I just like wouldn't be the same person. I think this one is definitely like it shaped me for the better. Like I said, I had gone through a lot of anger and depression and tried to figure out what I was doing with my life, and I had just come from living with my mom and getting this job. In New York, it was almost like, I guess I could describe it as DC and my life in politics was very black and white. And when I moved to New York, everything became color. Like that's just like, I just remember even like visiting New York for the first time, and I was like, I want to live here. Yeah. And it was in New York that I started skateboarding again, and I met this huge skateboarding community. And skateboarding there is very different than skateboarding here. It's such a tight-knit community because there's not as many people there that skate, and it just really changed my life. Like it opened up these whole new worlds and all of these different people. A huge kind of like scene in music and art and creativity, and which I also had at my job as well, because I worked with a lot of musicians, and that just like totally turned my life into the direction that I had always wanted it to go, which was more creative and like just curious about life and wanting to explore and adventure and meeting all these different people who were in action sports and stuff, which I had really never had. Even though I lived here in California, where the action sports community is huge, it just never felt inclusive. And in New York, it did, and that changed me, and allowed me to come back home and be kind of fully self-expressed, like who I wanted to be when I came back.
What's inspired you?
Definitely my wife. She's gone through a lot. She's comes from an immigrant family, a Mexican American family, and her family is very Catholic. And I'm obviously queer, so that was very hard to navigate that relationship. I'm very grateful that we have a good relationship with her family, as well as mine. That was very difficult, and she really inspires me because she's just such a loving person, and has been able to like push through all of that to just still be such a wonderful and kind and compassionate person. And she's taught me really like what compassion is, and I think that's always been really inspiring, and I've admired that, because I don't think that I have similar traits. I could also say my parents and my grandma, and I wouldn't have said that if I was like a teenager, but as I've gotten older, I really realized how much my parents went through, how much they had to sacrifice, how much they like didn't know what they were doing when they were a teenager or like in their 20s and having a child, and they've really inspired me a lot through just like their tenacity and everything that they've accomplished in life. I don't know, there's so many people. I'm like trying to think like who inspired me, but I think just the people that have been there throughout my journey in life. Like I think of teachers who really were the reason that I even went, the reason why I thought I was, let me say it this way, they are the reason that I went to college in the first place, because I didn't think I was good enough to go, and they were kind of pushing me. My 12th grade English teacher. There's just been people like that throughout my life who've really inspired me to keep going. And I think definitely like my wife, if it weren't for her, I probably would not have started skateboarding again. And that's really like where my drive and my purpose and really like my sense of community comes from.
What's been a humbling experience for you?
These are really good questions. This is good. I think I was gonna say actually like really understanding how much work goes behind action sports and skating and things like that, because it's definitely humbled me, and it kind of makes you realize like how much hard work goes into making dreams happen. But I want to also acknowledge when I worked as a coffee roaster, I worked there for 5 years at this company called Stumptown, and the level of like hard work and like work with your hands and like work on your hands and knees that it takes to produce a cup of coffee is like astonishing. And I think if it weren't for that experience, I really I don't think I would be as grateful as I am today for a lot of the things that I have. When I worked there, I started off in the office and then eventually moved on to work in our operations department in like warehouse, and then became a roaster, which means like you're using one of those big machines to like roast the coffee, and they're like mechanical, huge machines. And a lot of people don't realize that like you have to clean those, and like, you know, you got to take apart this big machine. I mean, it's basically like you're like a part-time mechanic, but you're also like kind of a part-time farm worker, because you're like on your hands and knees like scooping these raw coffee beans, and there's no other way to put it in the machine. Like, you have to put it in by hand. And you know, that's hundreds of pounds that you're lifting like every day. So that was like a lot of hard work. I mean, for a long time I was the only woman in the company that was a coffee roaster. It's like you don't really see women do that job. It's a very like physically demanding job. And it's like, you know, it's hard work, and you get your hands dirty. And I think that really like created this sense of appreciation for hard work and for what it takes to have like everything that we have in society. Is I just don't think people realize, like, you're like exhausted after each day, and that's just to make a cup of coffee. You know, I can't even imagine like all the food that we eat, like everything we make.
Does that amplify your sense of gratitude?
Oh, 100% for sure. Like, I think I remember this specific day where I was just having a really hard day, and there was like, we didn't have enough people that day, and I was like on the ground, because in order to scoop coffee out of these burlap bags, you have to kind of like be on the ground, and you need to scoop them into recipes of like 40-pound buckets, and then you're lifting the buckets on top of one another. And I was just like, dude, like, this is so hard right now. Like, I'm exhausted. You know, you get up very early in the morning, like 5 in the morning. Maybe you're the only person that day, and you've got to do like 10 things while also trying to like craftfully roast this recipe. And I just think like, I think of the supply chain, and you know, over the course of the time that I worked there, I learned a lot about agriculture and how that works. People in Latin America and Africa are literally putting these burlap bags like on their back and carrying it. And like in America, you know, we have OSHA and we have all of these like rules and like that say you can't do that. But like literally, like, dudes are picking up these 200-pound packs and just like throwing them on their back. And like we would have this joke with the guys that I worked with. They would be like, dude, if we tried to do that, we'd literally break. Like, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's definitely given me a sense of gratitude of what I have and how much work it takes to make what we have.
Go in your mind and think. This life event can be mental, physical, or spiritual. Tell me about a time in your life that you can relate with the word war.
That question is really interesting because, you know, the state of the world that we're currently in. I also studied international relations, so I studied a lot of, that was like a huge topic of what I focused on. And I think about this topic a lot. If I were to think about that word within my own life, I'd probably have to go back to like my teenage years and just being in a very dark place and kind of like questioning the morality of humanity. And in a sense, like being at war with myself. And I think a lot of us go through that. Like, you you kind of are just like fighting yourself on everything, and fighting, like, you feel like you're fighting humanity in a sense, and you question, like, why isn't it better? Like, why isn't humanity better? Like, I think I've spent probably like majority of my life asking that question, and it really started when I was like a teenager. Just being in that place, kind of like a dark room, just constantly. And I think a large part of the reason that I've committed a lot of my life to, I know it may seem that it's not related, but I've committed a large part of my life to environmental sustainability, because I feel like after all of my experiences working in government and in politics, I look at this world and I realize that, like, a lot of these problems that we have stem from resources, and they trickle down into like our everyday lives, even as me being a kid. Like, me being a kid and not being able to go surfing because the water is polluted, and like how much of an impact that has on my life, somebody else's life, or like I think about kind of like my wife's family that lives in an agricultural, very small town, and you kind of wonder, like, why do they live on the side of the tracks that has all the pollution? Things like that. And like that is kind of my sense that just like infuriates me. This these things that are so unfair, and they're there for a reason. And you kind of look at this and you realize that there's like this silent war happening. And I think when I first realized that, I was like a teenager. I was like in those places and realizing, like, why isn't it better? And it's not better because people like want something that somebody else has, or they're trying to make their lives better at the expense of somebody else.
So same type of question. Go in your mind and think. This life event can be mental, physical, or spiritual. Tell me about a time in your life that you can relate to the word peace.
I think I go back to that. I think I've already talked about this memory of like being in college, and for the first time I was with my partner, and I can't even remember what we were doing. I think we were like drinking tea or something. Like, it wasn't even it was just like very simple. And for the first time in a really long time since my childhood, I felt the sense of family. Like, I felt the sense of love. And I think it was also because, her sister was there, and she has a lot of sisters. She's like one of 9. And they just like always made me feel so welcome, and they had this sense of like familial like love about them. And I just remember being in their apartment, and there was just like a peace, like, and I've never like felt that sense of peace before. The only time I really remember feeling it was like when I was a kid, and you're just like kind of in this like golden hour days, and you're like just happy, But that's like, when I look back on it and I think of that idea of peace, that's like the first thing that comes to mind. Yeah.
Can you tell me about a truly difficult time in your life, how it felt and how you endured it?
I think my mom's alcoholism was probably the hardest thing I've had to encounter. I've had other challenges in life, but this was something that was a very like deeply ingrained pain that was going on in our family. And I just remember after college kind of moving back in with her and just being so angry and like desperate to get out of there. And I look back on it and I'm like, wow, like what must my mom felt in that situation? And after, I felt a lot of guilt for moving to the East Coast and for wanting to kind of like find my own life and be able to live not in that depression and alcoholism and all of that. And this sense of guilt really like followed me all throughout my time on the East Coast, and even like with things that I love, like skateboarding, like this sense of guilt would just always follow me around. And when I moved back to California, I'm not really sure what like caused my mom to really just have a breaking point, but something did, and she just like hit like super rock bottom, like lower than rock bottom, and kind of like had a mental breakdown and was just like, I'm not going to work, like I'm not doing anything. And that's just so not like her, because she's just like 100% about work and hardworking and wants to do that all the time. And just seeing someone like at their breaking point like that, and also like seeing them as a parent, and you realizing that the tables have now turned and you have to like step up. One, that was like hard and frustrating for me to be that person in my family and be like really pissed off at like the other family members that, I was like a kid when this was happening and like no one stepped up. That's kind of what like the resentment that I had also felt during my childhood, that like no one wanted to deal with this, no one wanted to see it, even though the signs were there. And now, it's coming back, and I'm an adult, and we're here now, so this is what's happening, and I have to, be here and do this. That was, it was heartbreaking to see my mom going through that, and just also realizing that like we really don't give people the ability to like come to peace with their mental illness in this country, or I just think like in the world in general. Like we don't give people the chance to heal, like even when they've been through something really traumatic and going through the whole like rehab situation, and like seeing so many doctors and like calling police, and just like no one was really wanted to just listen to her. And that was like the hardest thing, was like no one wanted to listen. And like, I sat there and I would listen, but she's like, I don't want you to be the one to listen. So it's like, well, I don't know how to solve this for you. And like, I don't know, was a part of the question like, how did I get through it? Because I can't remember the question, but dude, I like don't even know. Like, I don't know how I got through it. Like, I was just exhausted, emotionally spent, and at the same time this was all happening, my wife's dad was also going through alcoholism, and kind of like they were like, our parents are our baby boomers, and they were just like, I'm done. Like, I had nothing to look forward to. Like, I have all these regrets in my life and all of this stuff. And I think that the first thing that I had to do to really, like, push through it was to sacrifice my own time, sacrifice some parts of my, my dreams at the time. Although I told myself at that time, like, I can't let my dreams go. And, like, I think my mom would never forgive herself, in other words, if I gave up on my dreams to help her. So at the same time, I was saying, like, I have to continue skating. So I would, like, go to see my mom. I would live with her for some time, and I would go to the skate park for a few hours. Because I had to do that. I don't think either one of us would have, like, survived if we didn't kind of do those things for ourselves. And I think at the end of the day, like, the only way that both my mom and I got through it was just, like love and, like, a willingness to listen and just, like, heal and be at peace with yourself. Especially for my mom.
Can you tell me about a truly joyous moment in your life?
It's funny because, like, I would say my wedding day, but, like, those are, like, they're fun, but, like, not always, like, super joyous. I mean, that was definitely a huge moment in my life. It's related to my wedding, but it's more of just the feeling of having all of your family there and just feeling like belonging, like feeling friends and family. And it wasn't, like, specifically my wedding day. It was just this, like, sense of, like, wow, like, I'm gonna have family. And I think for me that's a huge thing, because after my parents' divorce, I never felt like I would have that again. Can I answer part 2 of that question? Part 2 is when I landed what's called a backside air on my skateboard, which is like the hardest trick ever, and it took me about 4 years to land it, and it was like a childhood dream come true, and, like, 2 different types of joy, but definitely, like, something.
They both seem beautiful.
Yeah, definitely.
I have the visual of your skateboard right now. What do you think keeps you up at night?
Keeps me up at night? Oh my god. Everything. I, like, don't sleep. I'm kind of, like, one of those types of people that, like, can't ever sleep. I'm total insomniac, and I think about just, like, everything going on in the world. Sometimes I'll just go into these, like, what me and my wife call a Wikipedia hole, where you just lose yourself in all of these webs of, like, thought. And like I said earlier, like, I studied politics and war, so, like, that, a lot of that keeps me up at night. Like, what is the reasoning behind this? Like, how can we fix this? How do we fix this huge problem of, like, environmental pollution? Like, how do we solve these problems? I think usually is what keeps me up at night. From small little problems to, like, huge societal problems. And I think eventually all that stuff that keeps me up at night, I'm starting to realize that I should, like, turn it into a book, because I spent so much time doing it that, like, I need to turn it into something productive. So.
What keeps you going every day?
I think curiosity. Like, just this sense of, like, the sense of wonder of, like, what is out there, what are we doing here. I always, like, talk about this sense of childhood wonder that comes with, like, fulfilling your dreams. And I think after I found that again, after starting skateboarding again in New York, it just like reinvigorated me and was like allowed me to live. It kept me going, because before that I was just angry all the time. Like, I was like, everything's screwed up, everything's effed up, everything's like nothing's ever gonna work. Politics is like messed up, you know. And after finding this, I think actually finding this sense of hope again was really what like kept me going.
Imagine you're in the hospital today with only hours to live. What would be your regrets?
I think I have two regrets, which is, one, I wished that I was like a little crazier when I was younger, because like it didn't really matter that much, and like you can get into trouble and it's really not going to be that big of a deal. And now I realize that, and I try to just be as crazy as possible without breaking the law. And then the second thing is, I wish that I would have done my teenage years and my childhood differently with my dad, which is something that I can't really change now, but I wish that I would have just talked to him and like learned from him, because he has a lot of story, and I really didn't like tap into that. And that would be, you know, I think things would have been a lot different. Like, I think my relationship with my family would have been a lot different if I had approached that differently.
So you're gonna make it, you're alive and well. Do you feel that you can change, or if not change those regrets, at least make amends with them?
For sure. I think I can't change a lot from my childhood, you know, like I can't go back and break more rules, but I can always change what I'm doing now. I try to live now. I think about this idea of, and it might sound morbid, but I think about this idea of death a lot, and I think that it came, you know, from very dark and difficult times of just realizing, like, oh my God, like, nothing matters. So, like, it just, everything matters. Yeah. You can do whatever you want. So, like, just go for it. And I try to live now so that I won't have any regrets. And I just keep that in my mind. I try to keep that in my mind at all times. I think with family, it's harder because those things have morphed and molded and like evolved through time, and like you can't really take those memories away. You can't take conversations away, but you can always add to something. So like with my dad, you know, I'm you know, it's kind of crazy, but like we've tried to mend our relationship, and just like talking to him, and oddly through quarantine, like Zoom has been a huge thing that's allowed us to connect, which is we've never been able to connect face to face, which is so bizarre to me, you know, like he's an engineer, so he just like is not very good at talking to people face to face, and having a different way of communicating has like completely changed our relationship, which is really cool. And as far as like changing my relationship with him in the past, obviously I can't do that, you know, I can't change what happened, but I can change how we approach each other now and try to learn from each other in the future.
Tell me what your dreams were as a kid, and that they're generally the same now. Do you have any other dreams now as an adult to add?
To be honest, like they're pretty similar. Like I kind of went back to the childhood dreams, but they've evolved into more of an adult, like, you know, sophistication, I guess, if you will. But I think for like a big part of me is really committed to bringing sustainability to business, and mostly like in action sports. I think like I'm finding my passion in that area, and I think it's like we'll see this world change a lot. Like I've been studying this for a while, and I'm looking at it right now, and I'm just like, dude, we're not even at the tip of like how our world is going to look in 20 years. It's going to be so different. And I was looking at it like a couple days ago, like these new electric car companies and just like all this stuff is happening right now. And I'm just like, wow, it's happening. We're living in it. So that's a big part of like, my dream is to leave a world that is thriving for future generations, and that where they can go surf and not have the water polluted, where they can live and not have bad air quality, and just like that's a huge part of my passion. The other thing that's another dream that has evolved as I've gotten older is to leave something behind, and I think I kind of mentioned it a couple minutes ago about wanting to write a book, and realizing that I never thought I wanted to be a writer, but I guess now like I'm realizing that that's what I always wanted to do, and leave behind these ideas and just like stories, kind of like this, and encouraging people to be curious and just like finding that childhood wonder. Like that's really like what I want to leave behind. That's kind of like my dream, and I think all of my dreams have that weaved into them. Of like, skateboarding is such a, silly childish thing, but when you see like your best friend who's also just a very angry person and jaded and was also involved in politics for a long time, and I land in air and he's like, whoa, that's like really cool. Like that sense of like hope from the sense of like him being jaded transitioning to a sense of like childhood wonder is so amazing. And like that's kind of what I'm living for. Like I want people to realize like there's hope, there's something to live for. There's the sense of curiosity of like, I have no idea how you just landed that. Like, how do you do that, And I think, like, as kids, that's what we live for. But we forget that as we grow up.
You're the author of your life book.
Nice.
It's your perfect ending.
I mean, I've talked a lot about like what I wanted in my dreams and stuff. I think if I was to like have a scene of the picture perfect ending, it would probably be like I'm like an old woman and like have a ranch and my wife is next to me and we're like sipping tea, and maybe like some of like space book that I wrote is like right next to me or something, and we have a ramp in our front yard, skateboarding, and like our grandkids are skating there, and like that would be like a picture perfect ending day, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. But
how would you think that day would feel like?
The same as the day that I described where I felt peace. That'd be picture perfect. Now you're gonna actually make me cry.
That's it.
Cool.
That's it.